Welcome back to another episode of UBBA Unplugged. Joining us today is Engineering Director with Southern Linc, Alan McIntyre. Alan, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, if you don't mind, Alan, let's go ahead and just jump right in. We'll kick things off and maybe share a little bit with our viewers an update on how Southern Linc is transforming your core network and some of your initiatives around that.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to believe, honestly, but we put in our private LT network almost 10 years ago now, and so the time's come, I guess you could say, to life cycle to replace a lot of our core network elements. And where we originally put in a core network that was kind of dedicated hardware and software from a vendor, the new core that we're putting in now is really all virtualized. So it's really a completely different architecture, and we're getting into things like containers and Kubernetes, terms I wasn't even familiar with till a few years ago. Um, so it's kind of a completely new deal. We've completed the virtualization of our IMS core network. We're about to upgrade our mission critical push to talk system. We're in the process of doing our OSS system as well, replacing it. And then we've got basically the core itself. And so that'll run through the end of the year. But really the advantages of this, going to this new architecture are multifold, I guess. It's supposed to give us the ability to upgrade without taking outages, which is pretty big for a utility. And it also sets us up, it's a dual mode core. And so we can run both 4G and then ultimately 5G on it. So really sets us up for the future with 5G. And, obviously that's the core aspect of it. There's some work at 3GPP now that we're doing for the RAN side for 5G. And so, you got to have kind of marry those two up ultimately. But we are setting our core up, through this year to be able to take that next step with 5G.
Very cool. Certainly a lot of initiatives going on there. So you mentioned something that I kind of want to touch on for this next aspect, and that's 3GPP. So can you explain a little bit for those tuning in just what 3GPP is and what are some of Southern Link's initiatives around that particular element?
Yeah, be happy to. I had the, guess, fortunate pleasure of participating in 3GPP for about 7 years, starting in 2010. It stands for Third Generation Partnership Project. And so it really was, I mean, when you hear 3G, it was really an effort around the 3G technology to have common standards across the world. When you think about like when 2G was out, there were different 2G standards and different technologies. And so if you got a phone from one carrier, it wouldn't work on another carrier's network. And then roaming was a challenge, especially internationally. And so the 3GPP standards body was set up really to kind of solve that. They made progress with 3G, but really it wasn't until 4G that those hurdles were all knocked down. And 4G was really the first, call it worldwide kind of adopted technology. Now that process at 3GPP is something to behold. It's a lot of engineers fighting over specifications and a lot of interesting arguments there. And we at Southern Linc, we had a proprietary network prior to moving to LT. And so, I kind of wondered after the first meeting, was the proprietary network so bad after all? But no, I mean, it's definitely an advantage to have a standards-based technology. Through our process with 3GPP, we got, part of it was when we started, we didn't even have, our spectrum wasn't even in a spectrum band for 3GPP. So the first initiative was to get our spectrum adopted, and that's band 26. It's a commercially deployed band now, but when we started, it didn't even exist. And so then we've been involved in the mission critical push to talk standards at 3GPP. Those really started probably in 2015, 14, something like that. And then first version of those was really around 2017. And then, now and there's different versions, there's releases in 3GPP. And so in release 18, which was just adopted, we did get the 3 megahertz channel bandwidth in the 5G standard. So that was kind of the first step. Now we're working I think in release 19 there'll be some carrier aggregation combinations for different bands with 3 megahertz channel bandwidth. So a lot of work there to kind of get our kind of uniqueness in the standards, I guess you will. But we have good partners. Anterix has been a good partner helping us with the 3 megahertz, as well as, believe it or not, it's a worldwide view. We've got the European railways that actually also wanted 3 megahertz in the 5G standard. So, you find partners where you can, and that's really what it's about. It's a consensus-based organization, and so they do meet around the world. So, you have to definitely get your traveling bag ready if you're going to participate in 3GPP. But it's an interesting process nonetheless.
Wow. So certainly a lot going on in and around Southern Linc.
Oh yeah.
3GPP alone sounds like a handful. So I really just have one question before we wrap things up on this episode. And you touched on it a little bit, but what do these kinds of initiatives mean for the future of utility networks, kind of as a whole? What's the bigger, broader implications?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think as we're doing this, we try to take that 5, 10 year view out, and that's one reason we go ahead and try to set ourselves up for 5G. Not that there's some burning reason to go to 5G right now, but over time, obviously, we want the ability to evolve our network into that. And so I think the more we have other utilities kind of kind of on a similar path, that just helps the industry as a whole. And when you think about device ecosystems and things like that, being able to kind of have those transitions when we want them, not necessarily when it's dictated by others. I mean, I think that's really the key. And I think that's really the benefit of UBBA, honestly, is we can have those discussions as a group of utilities, and and kind of coalesce around what makes sense for each of us. And it may not be one size fits all, but within a range, we're all probably there some point in time. So and so that's really like our view is always looking down the road and trying to anticipate what we'll need, and that's what we're doing with our core, that's what we're doing at 3GPP, and it's really trying to set ourselves up for the future, honestly.
Wonderful. Well, what a great way to wrap up this episode. That's going to do it for today. But Alan, thank you again for taking time out of your day to be here and share some of those exciting insights.
Yeah, glad to do it.
Excellent. Well, as always, be sure to follow UBBA on social media to stay up to date on all of the latest news coming from the Alliance, as well as newest podcast episodes. We'll see you next time.